Dr. Helen Carter sat on the cold metal floor of the prison cell and counted the days since her capture. 43 days of questions, 43 days of lies, and 43 days of keeping the most important secret in human history. The Zephyrian prison ship held over 2,000 human prisoners from the fallen colonies, miners, farmers, teachers, children, and the few surviving members of the Colonial Defense Force all crowded together in the large holding areas. The aliens had separated the military personnel for special questioning, but Helen was here because she was the chief science officer of Mining Station Omega-7. Lieutenant Alex Johnson sat nearby, his uniform torn and dirty from the battle. He was young, maybe 25 years old, but his eyes held the weight of their shared secret. Alex had been one of the few colonial Marines stationed at the outer settlements. Like all colonial military personnel, he knew only what he needed to know about human defenses. The cell door opened with a loud clang. 2 Zephyrian guards entered, their tall, thin bodies covered in silver armor. Behind them walked Sub-Commander Velnox, the alien officer who had been questioning the prisoners for weeks. Dr. Carter, Velnox spoke in careful English. The translator device around his neck made his voice sound mechanical. Come with me. It is time for another discussion. Helen stood slowly, her legs stiff from sitting on the hard floor. She had learned to show fear and submission to the aliens. They expected conquered people to be broken and afraid. She gave them what they wanted to see. The interrogation room was small and bright. Helen sat in a chair facing Velnox across a metal table. The alien officer had learned much about humans during his weeks of questioning. He thought he understood their military structure and capabilities. Tell me again about your defense fleets, Velnox said, his dark eyes studying Helen's face. How many ships guard your homeworld? Helen looked down at her hands, pretending to be frightened. I already told you everything I know. The Colonial Defense Force had 12 ships. They were our main protection. Now they are gone. Velnox leaned forward. But surely your homeworld has more ships. A planet with billions of people must have stronger defenses. Earth has maybe 50 ships. Helen lied smoothly. Old ones like the Colonials used. The government spent most of their money on trade vessels and exploration ships, not military ones. This was exactly what Velnox wanted to hear. His intelligence reports had suggested that humans were a peaceful species more interested in commerce than warfare. The battle at the colonies had shown they could fight when cornered, but their technology was clearly inferior to Zephyrian weapons. What about your military bases? Velnox continued. Where does Earth keep its defense fleet? Helen pretended to think carefully, as if trying to remember details that frightened her. There are 3 main bases, one near the moon, one at Mars, and one at the asteroid belt mining station. But the ships there are just patrol vessels and cargo haulers. Every word Helen spoke was a lie, but she delivered each falsehood with perfect conviction. The truth was that she had no idea how many ships Earth really had. Colonial personnel were kept completely separate from the main military structure. Even the colonial governors did not know about Earth's true defenses. But Helen knew enough to understand that the colonies had always been a mask. They were humanity's way of appearing weak while building strength in secret. The old ships and volunteer crews that defended the outer settlements were meant to be seen and defeated. They were bait in a trap that was centuries in the making. When the interrogation ended, Helen was returned to her cell. Alex Johnson gave her a slight nod, asking without words if she had maintained their cover story. Helen touched her ear briefly, their agreed signal that all was well. That night, as the other prisoners slept, Helen lay awake thinking about Captain Jake Morrison and the other brave souls who had died defending the colonies. They had played their parts perfectly, fighting hard enough to seem genuine but losing convincingly enough to make the aliens overconfident. Commander Ryan Blake had survived the battle by escaping in a life pod before his ship exploded. The aliens had captured him 3 days later and brought him to the prison ship. During his interrogations, he had carefully fed the Zephyrians false information about human technology and fleet positions. Their ships are slow, Ryan had told his interrogators. Human engines are based on old fusion technology. We cannot match your speed or firepower. The aliens believed every word. Why would they not? They had just defeated what they thought was humanity's main defense force. The primitive ships and basic tactics they had encountered confirmed their intelligence reports about human military weakness. Sub-Commander Velnox compiled his reports for Admiral Kextar with growing confidence. The humans had fought bravely, but they were clearly no match for Zephyrian technology. Their homeworld would fall just as easily as the colonies had. The humans call their main fleet the Earth Defense Force, Velnox reported to his commander. It consists of approximately 50 vessels, mostly converted cargo ships and patrol boats. They have 3 main bases with minimal fortifications. Admiral Kextar reviewed the intelligence with satisfaction. His fleet of 400 ships would overwhelm Earth's pitiful defenses. The conquest would be swift and decisive. What neither Velnox nor Kextar realized was that every piece of information they had gathered was exactly what humanity wanted them to believe. The prisoners had maintained perfect discipline, each one telling the same carefully crafted lies about human weakness and unpreparedness. Dr. Helen Carter and the other prisoners played their roles as defeated colonists while keeping the greatest secret in human history. Earth's real military was not 50 ships of converted cargo vessels. It was not based at 3 poorly defended locations. It was not built on primitive fusion technology that could not match alien capabilities. The truth was so far beyond Zephyrian comprehension that even if Helen had told them directly, they would not have believed her. Humanity had spent 2 centuries building a military force that remained completely hidden from the galaxy. The colonies were not just settlements but camouflage for a preparation that spanned generations. As the Zephyrian fleet prepared to attack, Earth confident in their overwhelming superiority, the prisoners aboard their ships continued their performance. They showed fear and despair while secretly knowing that their capture and suffering served a greater purpose. The aliens thought they had broken humanity's spirit by defeating their main defense force. Soon they would learn the difference between humanity's public face and its hidden strength. Admiral Patricia Wells stood on the bridge of the UES Leviathan and watched the tactical displays that showed every ship in the human fleet. 3,247 vessels waited in the darkness of space, each one invisible to alien sensors thanks to advanced cloaking technology that had been developed in secret for over 50 years. Patricia was 60 years old and had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. She had trained under admirals who had trained under the founders of the Hidden Fleet program. For 2 centuries, humanity had been building and waiting, always keeping their true strength concealed from the galaxy. Commander Pierce, Patricia, called to her chief of staff. Status report on all fleet groups. Nathan Pierce, a sharp-minded officer in his 40s, checked his displays. Ma'am, First Fleet is in position near Earth orbit. Second and Third Fleets are stationed at the outer system jump points. Fourth Fleet is hidden in the asteroid belt. All ships report ready for Operation Revelation. Patricia nodded. The operation had been planned for decades, waiting for the day when humanity would be forced to reveal its true power. The loss of the colonies and the brave volunteers of the Colonial Defense Force had triggered the protocols that brought them to this moment. Signal from Earth Command, reported Lieutenant Kate Brooks from the communications station. Zephyrian, fleet approaching. 400 vessels detected. Admiral Kextar commanding. Patricia studied the enemy formation on her screens. The aliens had reinforced since their attack on the colonies, bringing double their original force. They clearly expected stronger resistance at Earth than they had found at the outer settlements. Unfortunately for them, they had no idea how much stronger that resistance would actually be. Time to intercept, Patricia asked. 2 hours, 18 minutes at current speed, Nathan replied. Patricia walked to the center of her bridge and looked at her crew. These men and women had trained their entire careers for this battle. They served on ships that were marvels of human engineering, equipped with weapons and defenses that would seem like magic to the aliens who thought they understood human technology. The UES Leviathan was over 2 kilometers long and carried more firepower than the entire colonial defense force combined. Its armor could withstand direct hits from the heaviest alien weapons. Its engines could accelerate the massive ship faster than the small colonial vessels the aliens had destroyed. And it was just one ship among thousands. Admiral Kextar led. his expanded armada toward Earth with complete confidence. His intelligence reports had confirmed that Earth's defenses consisted of perhaps 60 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels with minimal combat capability. His force of 400 warships would destroy them easily. "Admiral," reported his sensor operator, "detecting human ships moving to intercept. Count is approximately 58 vessels." Kextar smiled beneath his breathing mask. Even fewer than expected. The humans were making this simple for him. "All ships prepare for battle," Kextar ordered across his fleet communications. "This will be over quickly," but as the Zephyrian fleet moved into Earth's outer system, something impossible began to happen. The empty space around them suddenly filled with massive energy signatures as cloaking fields deactivated. One by one, then dozens at a time. Then, hundreds enormous human warships materialized from what had seemed like empty void. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out, fear creeping into his voice. "New contacts, many new contacts. Sir, I'm reading over 3,000 human vessels." Kexter stared at his displays in disbelief. The ships appearing around his fleet dwarfed anything humans had shown before. Each vessel was larger and more heavily armed than his own flagship. They moved with precision and speed that his intelligence reports had said was impossible for human technology. On the bridge of the UES Leviathan, Admiral Patricia Wells watched the alien fleet's formation begin to waver as panic spread through their ranks. The moment of revelation had come, and she could see the shock and terror in the enemy's sudden, desperate maneuvers. "All fleet commanders," Patricia spoke into her communication system. "You may fire when ready." Captain Lisa Park, who had survived the destruction of the colonies in an escape pod, now commanded her own vessel, the UES Vengeance. She had been given this ship and this chance to honor the memory of Captain Jake Morrison and all the others who had died maintaining humanity's secret. "This is for the Defiant," Lisa whispered as her ship's main cannon charged. The weapon could crack a moon in half. Against Kextar's flagship, it would be like using a hammer against an egg. The Battle of Earth's Gate began with a display of human firepower that shattered Zephyrian understanding of reality. The aliens had expected to face primitive fusion, missiles, and basic energy weapons. Instead, they found themselves under attack by particle beams that could slice through their strongest armor, quantum torpedoes that could destroy multiple ships with a single hit, and defensive systems that seemed to absorb their most powerful attacks without taking damage. Admiral Kextar's fleet, which had seemed overwhelmingly superior just minutes before, found itself outnumbered 8-1 by ships that were individually more powerful than anything in their armada. The alien formation collapsed as captains tried desperately to escape the killing field that Earth's outer system had become. Subcommander Velnox, Kextar called to his aid over the sound of alarms and explosions. "Send a message to the High Command. Tell them everything we believed about human capabilities was wrong." Velnox tried to send the message but found that human ships were jamming their communications. The aliens were trapped in a battle they could not win, fighting an enemy they had completely misjudged. Patricia Wells watched the alien fleet's destruction with no satisfaction, only grim determination. She had hoped this day would never come, that humanity could remain hidden and peaceful among the stars. But the Zephyrians had forced this revelation, and now the galaxy would have to deal with the consequences. "Nathan," she called to her chief of staff, "begin accepting surrender offers. Any alien ship that powers down its weapons and submits will be spared." Some Zephyrian captains took the offer, their ships going dark as they surrendered to the impossible human fleet. Others tried to fight to the end, their vessels dying in brief flashes of light as human weapons ended their existence. When the battle was over 14 hours later, fewer than 30 Zephyrian ships remained functional. Admiral Kextar's flagship was one of them, heavily damaged but still intact because Patricia had ordered her fleet to capture rather than destroy it. As rescue ships moved to collect survivors and prisoners, Admiral Patricia Wells prepared her report for Earth Command. The secret that humanity had kept for 2 centuries was now revealed to the galaxy. There would be no going back to the old ways of hiding in plain sight. The Zephyrian Confederation and every other species in the galaxy would soon learn the truth. that the colonial prisoners had kept hidden through weeks of interrogation. Humanity had never been fighting at full strength, and now the universe would have to adjust to that reality. General Marcus Davis sat in the war room deep beneath Earth's surface and watched reports flow in from across human space. The screens around him showed battle after battle, as the truth about humanity's military strength spread like wildfire throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian attack on Earth had been just one part of their invasion plan. While Admiral Kextar led his fleet toward humanity's homeworld, other Zephyrian forces had struck at human colonies and outposts throughout their territory. All of these attacks were meeting the same fate as the assault on Earth. "Sir," called Colonel Jennifer Nash from her position at the communications console. "Admiral Stone reports victory at the Ross system. Zephyrian Third Fleet has been neutralized with minimal human casualties." Marcus nodded and marked another success on his tactical display. The pattern was repeating across dozens of star systems. Zephyrian fleets would arrive expecting to find weak colonial defenses and instead encounter massive human armadas, equipped with technology the aliens had never imagined. In the prison ship orbiting Earth, Dr. Helen Carter stood at the observation window and watched Zephyrian prisoners being brought aboard in the same cells where she had been held for weeks. The reversal of fortune was complete and absolute. Subcommander Velnox, her former interrogator, sat in restraints across from her. The alien officer who had seemed so confident and superior during his questioning sessions now stared at her with eyes filled with fear and confusion. "How?" was the only word Velnox could manage to speak. Helen studied the alien with the same clinical interest he had once shown her. "You made assumptions based on incomplete information. That is always dangerous in any kind of research. But your ships," Velnox continued, his translator device making his voice sound even more mechanical than usual. "Your weapons, your technology. Our intelligence said humans were primitive, that your fastest ships could barely reach half-light speed." Helen sat down across from the alien prisoner. After weeks of maintaining lies and deception, she found a strange relief in being able to tell the truth. "Your intelligence was based on what we wanted you to see. The Colonial Defense Force was never meant to be our real military. It was meant to make enemies underestimate us." The alien's face showed confusion. "But why hide your strength? Most species display their power to avoid conflict." "Most species think in terms of decades," Helen replied. "Humans think in terms of centuries. We have been preparing for this kind of war since we first reached the stars 200 years ago." Velnox struggled to understand what she was telling him. "You mean your entire colonial system was designed to deceive us? Not just you," Helen said. "Any species that might threaten humanity. The colonies were real settlements with real people living real lives. But they were also humanity's mask, allowing us to appear weak while we built strength in secret." Captain Jake Morrison, who had been recovered alive from his escape pod after the battle at the colonies, now commanded the UES Retribution, one of the newest and most powerful ships in the human fleet. His vessel was 3 times larger than the old Defiant and carried weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Jake stood on his bridge and looked at the tactical display showing the Zephyrian home system. His ship was part of a fleet of 500 vessels preparing to show the aliens the full consequences of their unprovoked attack on human civilians. "Captain," reported his new communications officer, Lieutenant Ben Hayes. "Message from Admiral Wells. Operation Final Lesson is authorized." Jake had mixed feelings about this mission. He understood the necessity of showing the galaxy that humanity could not be attacked without consequences, but he took no pleasure in bringing war to civilian populations. "Signal the fleet," Jake ordered. "All ships maintain formation. Remember, we target military installations only. No civilian casualties." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian home system and found themselves facing the aliens' reserve fleet. 200 of the Confederation's finest warships moved to intercept the human force, confident that they could defend their home world. Admiral Kextar, now a prisoner aboard the UES Leviathan, watched the battle through a monitor in his cell. He saw his own people's ships destroyed with the same shocking ease that had characterized every engagement since the humans revealed their true capabilities. Your reserve fleet is fighting well, Admiral Patricia Wells said as she visited the alien commander in his cell. But they are still thinking in terms of the war they expected to fight, not the war they are actually fighting. Kextar looked up at the human admiral with something approaching respect. My species has fought wars for 1,000 years. We have never encountered an enemy like yours. That is because we are not your enemy, Patricia replied. We never wanted to be anyone's enemy, but you forced this conflict when you attacked our colonies and killed our people. The battle for the Zephyrian home system lasted only 6 hours. The alien reserve fleet was completely destroyed, and human forces established orbital control over the planet. But true to their word, no human weapons fired on civilian targets. The demonstration of power was complete without unnecessary bloodshed. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as news of humanity's true strength spread. Species that had been considering their own attacks on human territory quickly reconsidered their plans. The Andromedans recalled their exploration fleets from human borders. The Centauri Republic sent urgent diplomatic messages requesting immediate peace talks. General Marcus Davis received reports from intelligence services throughout human space. Sir, we are detecting massive military buildups in several alien territories. It appears they are taking defensive positions. Marcus nodded. This was the outcome he had hoped to avoid but expected nonetheless. They are afraid. Fear makes species do stupid things. Increase patrols along all our borders and prepare for the possibility that someone else might try to strike first. But the show of force had its desired effect on most potential enemies. The Vega Collective, which had been secretly supplying weapons to anti-human rebels, immediately ceased all hostile activities and requested formal diplomatic relations. Dr. Helen Carter, now serving as humanity's chief liaison with alien prisoners, compiled detailed reports on how different species were reacting to the revelation of human military power. Her analysis would help Earth's leaders understand how to manage their new position in galactic politics. The Zephyrians are a warrior culture, she reported to General Davis. They respect strength and understand the concept of decisive defeat, but other species may react differently to discovering that humanity has been hiding such massive military capabilities. The war that had begun with the attack on human colonies was ending, but its consequences were just beginning. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows and shown the galaxy their true face. Some species would welcome this revelation and seek alliance with such a powerful neighbor. Others would see humanity as a threat that needed to be contained or destroyed. General Davis prepared his recommendations for Earth's civilian leadership. The age of hiding was over, and humanity would need to decide how to use their newly revealed power in a galaxy that would never see them the same way again. The Great Council Chamber on the neutral world of Harmony had never hosted a meeting like this one. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy sat around the massive circular table, but all eyes were focused on the human delegation, led by Admiral Patricia Wells. 3 months had passed since the failed Zephyrian invasion revealed humanity's true military strength to the galaxy. In that time, the balance of power among the stars had shifted dramatically. Species that had once ignored or dismissed humans now sought audiences with Earth's leaders. Patricia stood at the speaking podium and looked around the chamber at faces that showed everything from curiosity to fear to barely concealed anger. She knew that her words today would shape the future of human relations with every other intelligent species in the galaxy. Honored representatives, Patricia began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. Humanity seeks no territorial expansion beyond our current borders. We require only recognition of our sovereignty and assurance that no further aggression will be directed toward human space or human citizens. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as the various species discussed this statement among themselves. Admiral Kextar, now representing the defeated Zephyrian Confederation as part of their formal surrender terms, listened with the disciplined attention of a professional military officer. Council Prime Zara of the Andromedans, a tall, elegant being with silver skin and large dark eyes, spoke first. The Andromedan Republic acknowledges that humanity's response to unprovoked aggression was measured and proportionate. However, many of us are concerned about the implications of such hidden military strength. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the chamber. The revelation that humans had concealed thousands of advanced warships for centuries, while appearing to possess only minimal defenses, had shocked every intelligence service in the galaxy. Dr. Helen Carter, now serving as humanity's chief xenobiologist and diplomatic advisor, stepped forward to address these concerns. Her weeks as a prisoner had given her unique insight into how alien species thought about military power and deception. The choice to maintain defensive secrecy was made by our ancestors over 2 centuries ago, Helen explained. When humanity first encountered other species, we discovered that the galaxy was not always a peaceful place. Rather than engage in an arms race or attempt to conquer our neighbors, we chose to appear weak while building the strength necessary to defend ourselves. The representative from the Vega Collective, a being that looked like a walking crystal formation, projected its thoughts through harmonic vibrations. But such deception implies a lack of trust in galactic civilization. How can we build relationships with a species that hides its true nature? Admiral Patricia Wells returned to the podium to address this point. We hid our military capabilities, not our true nature. Human colonies, trade missions, and diplomatic contacts have always represented our genuine desire for peaceful coexistence. Our defensive preparations were insurance against those who might mistake our peaceful intentions for weakness. Commander Ryan Blake, recently promoted to admiral after his survival of the colonial battles, presented the practical implications of humanity's new position. Human colonies will now be protected by active military presence rather than hidden defenses. The era of viewing any human settlement as an easy target is permanently over. This statement drew visible reactions from several species whose expansion plans had included human-controlled territory. The hegemony of suns, a militant empire from the galactic north, had been particularly aggressive in their claims on human space. Sub-Commander Velnox, attending as part of the Zephyrian delegation, requested permission to speak. His time as both interrogator and prisoner had given him a unique perspective on human psychology. I have studied humanity more closely than perhaps any other non-human, Velnox said, his mechanical translator making his words sound formal and precise. What frightens my people is not your weapons or your ships, but your patience. Any other species with such power would have used it for conquest long ago. A long silence followed this observation. The truth of it was undeniable to everyone present. Military power on the scale that humanity had revealed was typically used for expansion and domination, not hidden away for purely defensive purposes. Patricia nodded acknowledgement to the alien officer. Perhaps that is precisely why we were given such power and others were not. The responsibility that comes with great strength requires wisdom that develops over many generations. The formal presentations continued for hours, but the real negotiations happened during the breaks and private meetings between delegations. The Centauri Republic offered a mutual defense pact. The Trade Federation proposed expanded commercial agreements. Even some of the more aggressive species began discussing non-aggression treaties. Admiral Kextar approached Patricia during one of these breaks. The Zephyrian military leader had spent his captivity studying human military doctrine and strategic thinking. Your species continues to surprise me, Kextar said. Most conquerors would have demanded tribute or territory after such a decisive victory. Patricia smiled slightly. We are not conquerors, Admiral. We are defenders who were forced to reveal ourselves. The Zephyrian Confederation is welcome to rebuild and prosper, as long as it does so peacefully. The final session of the council meeting established what historians would later call the Harmony Accords. The major species of the galaxy formally recognized humanity's right to defend itself and agreed to new protocols for interspecies conflict resolution. Captain Jake Morrison, attending as a military advisor, watched the signing ceremony with mixed emotions. The brave volunteers of the Colonial Defense Force had died to maintain humanity's secret, but their sacrifice had led to this moment of galactic recognition and respect. Dr. Helen Carter compiled the final diplomatic reports that would be sent back to Earth. The age of hiding was truly over, but humanity had emerged into the light as a respected power rather than a feared conqueror. "The galaxy will take time to adjust to our new position," she reported to General Marcus Davis via secure communication. "But the initial reactions suggest that most species prefer dealing with a strong but peaceful neighbor rather than continuing to guess about our true capabilities." As the various delegations prepared to leave Harmony and return to their home worlds, the shape of a new galactic order was already becoming clear. Humanity would be a major power, but one committed to stability and peace rather than expansion and conquest. Admiral Patricia Wells stood at the viewport of her ship and watched the other vessels departing for their respective territories. The stars belonged to all species, as they always had, but now they would remain free because everyone knew that humanity stood ready to defend that freedom. The secret was out, the mask was off, and the galaxy would never again mistake human restraint for human weakness. In the end, perhaps that was exactly what the universe needed. A species powerful enough to keep the peace, but wise enough to use that power only when absolutely necessary. The war that revealed humanity's true strength was over, but the peace that followed would be humanity's greatest victory. Captain Jake Morrison looked out the window of his ship and saw death coming toward them. The alien fleet filled the black space like angry stars, each ship bigger than anything humans had ever built. 200 enemy vessels moved in perfect lines toward the small human colonies floating near the edge of their solar system. Jake turned to his crew on the bridge of the UES Defiant. His ship was old, maybe 20 years past its best days, but it was all they had out here in the colonies. The other 11 ships in his small group were just as old and just as outgunned. "Lisa, what are they saying now?" Jake asked his communications. Officer Lisa Park pressed her hand to her ear and listened to the alien message coming through the speakers. Her face was calm, but Jake could see worry in her eyes. "They want us to leave the colonies in 1 hour. They say if we stay, they will destroy us all." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The colonies housed over 50,000 people spread across 3 mining stations and 2 agricultural worlds. These were families, children, workers who had spent their whole lives building new homes among the stars. Commander Ryan Blake, Jake's second-in-command, stepped closer to the captain's chair. He was a young man, maybe 30 years old, but he had smart eyes that saw things others missed. "Sir, we both know what we have to do." Jake nodded slowly. Both men carried a secret that could never be spoken aloud. Not here, not in front of the others. The ships they commanded were not humanity's real navy. They were the Colonial Defense Force, made up of volunteers and old equipment. Their job was not to win battles, but to make the enemy think they had won. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison." Jake spoke into his communication device. "We fight for our people. We fight for our homes. Show these aliens what humans can do." The alien fleet came closer. Their ships were smooth and silver, like drops of mercury floating in space. The largest ship in the front was 3 times bigger than Jake's vessel. It had weapons that could turn his ship into dust in seconds. Admiral Kextar of the alien fleet watched the small human ships through his command screens. He had studied these creatures called humans for many months. His intelligence officers told him this was their main defense force. 12 ships against his 200. It would be over quickly. "Sub-Commander Velnox," Kextar called to his aide, "begin the attack. Show these primitives the power of the Zephyrian Confederation." The space between the 2 fleets erupted in light and fire. The alien ships fired beams of pure energy that cut through space like swords. The human ships fired back with simple missiles and energy weapons that looked weak compared to the alien technology. But Jake Morrison had not lived through 20 years of space battles by fighting fair. He ordered his ships to scatter and use the asteroid field nearby for cover. The human vessels ducked and weaved between the floating rocks, making it hard for the aliens to get clean shots. "Ryan, take 3 ships and circle around to their left side," Jake ordered. "Lisa, tell the mining stations to start their evacuation now." The battle became a deadly game of hide and seek among the asteroids. The human ships were smaller and faster than the alien vessels. They used this to their advantage, darting out from behind rocks to fire quick shots before disappearing again. Jake's ship, the Defiant, managed to destroy 2 alien cruisers by hiding behind a large asteroid and firing when they came too close. The explosions lit up the dark space like new suns being born, but the odds were too great. For every alien ship the humans destroyed, they lost one of their own. Commander Blake's ship, the Colonial Pride, took a direct hit to its engine and started spinning out of control. Jake watched helplessly as his friend's vessel broke apart in a ball of fire. "Jake, we can't hold them much longer," came a voice over the radio. It was Captain Amy Rogers of the UES Frontier. Her ship was badly damaged and losing air. Jake looked at his tactical display. Only 4 human ships were still fighting. The aliens had lost maybe 15 vessels, but they still had over 180 ships ready to fight. The math was simple and cruel. "All remaining ships," Jake said into his communicator, his voice heavy with sadness. "It's been an honor serving with you. Give them everything we have left." The final minutes of the battle were desperate and fierce. The human ships fought like cornered animals, using every trick and tactic they knew. Jake's ship rammed an alien cruiser, sacrificing itself to take down the enemy vessel. As the Defiant broke apart around him, Jake smiled slightly. The aliens would think they had beaten humanity's best. They had no idea what was really waiting for them at Earth. Admiral Kextar watched the last human ship explode in a bright flash of light. The battle was over. His fleet had won, though it cost him more ships than expected. These humans had fought harder than his intelligence report suggested they would. "Send word to the High Command," Kextar ordered. "The human colonies have fallen. Their defense fleet has been destroyed. We are ready to proceed to their home world." The alien admiral felt proud of his victory, but also slightly troubled. The humans had used unusual tactics and fought with desperate courage. Perhaps their main world would offer stronger resistance than his spies had predicted. As the Zephyrian fleet moved toward the captured colonies to take prisoners and gather information, they had no idea they had just fought against humanity's weakest forces. The real human navy was still out there, waiting in the dark between the stars, preparing for a war the aliens could not imagine.